Most of us don't listen in complete sentences, right? Yeah, we think we do. But the moment we hear something that affirms our beliefs or challenges them, we usually stop listening. Like we hear a part we like or a part we hate, and then we'll cut the other person off. And I don't mean verbally, because many times this happens mentally. We'll silently interrupt people with our own thoughts and opinions. And so even if we don't open our mouths, we've closed our minds. And conflict is born in that space. Conflict is by its nature a miscommunication problem. It's not always because someone misspoke, but often because we mishear or don't hear at all. We filter what's said through how we feel, not what the other person meant. And because of that, entire conversations collapse over a fragment of information. To listen in complete sentences is to let someone finish their thought, even if it's uncomfortable, even if we disagree, even if your mind is screaming to interrupt, because until their thought is complete, the true meaning of their message isn't clear. And until the meaning of their message is clear, your response isn't grounded in reality. It's grounded in presumption or assumption. So if you want to avoid unnecessary conflict, you've got to learn to listen all the way through. So often conflict isn't just about what's said, it's about what's missed. And more often than not, what's missed is the point.
What the hell did you just say?
I said I'm never coming back again. Next I stepped away from the mirror. I got my mind made up now, cause I can see the future much clearer. What's happening, fam? L.A.R movement still moving. Subscribe or die trying. You see the thumbnail. More importantly, you saw the clips. The problems with communication. So some of the things this guy's talking about, I definitely agree with. And there's some things about it that I just want to touch on. So do people hear everything somebody says? A lot of time, no, because people aren't really good listeners like he was talking about. And then, so people do hear words in parts. And, being online and being on panels long enough to have conversations with people, you realize, oh, yeah, like you didn't hear a word I said. You just heard a sentence of trigger words and you just went completely off the rails. And you can't talk to people like that because they don't listen. It's hard to have a conversation with a person who's not a listener, right? And then on a complete opposite end of that spectrum, you have people who listen very well. And sometimes the people are talking and they don't expect you to listen, or they hope you're not really listening to them completely. And when you're a really good listener, you have questions, like you go, or you put stuff together that people said. And when people are trying to say stuff indirectly, you pick it up. You get what I'm saying? So that becomes an issue. That becomes an issue also, because sometimes people aren't expecting somebody to actually listen to them. They're just expecting to give their pitch, and hopefully they give you a couple of keywords and you just jump on that and forget everything else they said. And then something about this particular guy that's talking, and I've noticed this over the years, uh, this default white talk, default Caucasian speak. You know, let me just talk to you for a second about this stuff that, and a lot of times, um, for a person who's living in different regions of the United States, a lot of times to people that's insulting. So the minute people hear you talk to them and they're like, oh, for you to communicate with me, you think, you know, you have to put your default white voice on because it's supposed to just work everywhere. It's supposed to be a worldwide assimilated understanding. People are distrusting of that because it's like, hmm, why you just why can't you just communicate like who you are, wherever you are, and wherever you're from? And because if you take that on the East Coast in certain places, take that in the South, take that in the Midwest, people are not gonna know your dialect like that. They're gonna be like, something wrong with you. We don't talk like that here. Even the people in higher positions don't talk like that. People who are intellectual don't talk like that. So that becomes an issue too. Uh, One of the other things about just problem with communication is people want to be heard. Sometimes you get people who just want to be heard, and talking is their way of filtering through what they really want to say. They're not actually straightforward, right? And they can't communicate in a straightforward way. And to a lot of people, it's aggravating. It's time consuming because, man, I'm sitting here listening to you go on and 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 go on, and you still haven't got to what the issue is. And then now that I done said 75,000 words, now I can say this paragraph. And it's like, why you ain't just say that from the beginning? Like, stop wasting people's time. And then on the opposite end of that spectrum, you have people who are very straightforward. And a lot of times I've noticed it's weird, but when you're very straightforward, it's like off putting. Like, people get offended by you, by a person being just straightforward. Like, bang, 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 bang. It's like, yo, we not gonna have a conversation first? Like, we are having a conversation. Bang, 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 bang. And like, no, we gotta, warm up and stretch a little bit, and you know, go in circles a little bit. Like, well, I don't, I don't like you now. You just, straight out, just say it what it was. People don't like that. Straightforward becomes offensive in communication. So the irony is, on one side, it takes all day and that's aggravating. And on the other side, it's right to the point and it's aggravating. And that's the other part of, um, why people have a communication problem, is because it's no nice way to say this. People want you to read, not necessarily read the room, but read the person. People, have want to have this. I have all these different communication styles, and you have to be smart enough to figure out a person's style of communication. You have to be so smart that you have to figure out their style of communication and listening, because they can't tell you, which is dumb in itself. You get what I'm saying? So you have that issue, because why don't you tell me this is how you what works for communicating with you? Why should I have to tell you? Oh, because you don't know. And then you'll have the people who tell you, if you do this, talk to me this, I'm good with that. And then you talk to them in that way, and then they can't handle it. And it's like, wait, this is what you told me. I know what I told you, but I've changed. From 2 weeks ago. Okay, whatever. So we have that issue, which is another problem with communication. Um, how can I put this? We got one major issue that is some people don't know how to communicate because they're communicating in imagery. The imagery is supposed to speak for them, and you're supposed to figure out what the imagery means. And it's like, no, because it's so ambiguous. You get what I'm saying? You're just supposed to read between every line on the planet, and it's like, no, you didn't understand what I was saying. You didn't say anything. You didn't understand when I talked about this, and this is what I mean. There are people who are ambiguous, and the imagery says this, their conversation says that, but they expect for you to pick up whatever they got going on in their mind in a plan, and that's diametrically opposed mean this. And it's like, man, I just thought you was all over the place. And then you have people who communicate, very sporadically. You know, when I say sporadically, we talking about this, and then they over here, then they down here, and then they back over here, and then they back over there, and they up there somewhere, and then they down it. It's like, wait, you having 5 conversations in one conversation, and they expect you to keep up. It's kind of like
And I know people don't do this anymore because people don't dance no more. All they do is this. But it's kind of like dancing with somebody, and the minute y'all catch a rhythm, they just switch up the rhythm, and then you catch that one, and they switch it up, and then it's like, oh, okay, you just wanted to cause chaos, you know. You like you don't like getting on the same page as another person, or you don't like when a person gets on the same page as you. You just got to switch it up, and that's a communication issue. Um, and then you got the silent people who don't say anything. Some people are silent people because they're listeners, and their responses are, well, they might be short, but they're well thought out because they've listened to you and listened to you, and they put everything together, and they go, okay, so you mean this, and they go, yeah, and it always seems, and they come off as wise, which they are, but because they're great listeners. And then you got people who just silent and they just don't say nothing, and they just want you to figure out everything, and like you do all the thinking and talking for me, and if it ain't the way that I think it should be, then we're gonna have a problem. It just makes no sense. But these are some of the problems with communications, and you can put class, race, gender, region, ethnicity. You can put all that into that pot too, and it creates a hodgepodge of differences also. So I mean, it, it's interesting. You have to learn a lot over the years. So y'all tell me what you think. Like, share, subscribe. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace. You ever been to the top of the universe? I'm gonna tell you that.